I'm going to mention all your stuff up front here.
Okay.
So welcome back to Grimerica Outlawed. With us today is Dr. Michael Biamonte. I'm going to say his three websites right off the bat here: health-truth.com, New York City CandidaDoctor.com, New York City ThyroidDoctor.com. He's the founder of the Biamonte Center for Clinical Nutrition, the co-creator of BioCybernetics, and also, of course, the author of the Candida Chronicles, a manual for Candida and yeast infections. So we're looking forward to chatting about all that. Welcome to Grimerica. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, this will be fun. We had a friend of the show that was, I think he must have been following your work probably back when you, after your book 2016, I think, because there was a lot of talk about cleanses for Candida, like a Candida cleanse.
Right.
I think it was called the Wild Rose. Maybe does that ring a bell?
No.
It's like there was a cleanse that was going around for, and it was gin. It was like a spice, maple syrup,
Oh, Jesus.
and a spice and something like there
That
was
doesn't sound good.
lemon maple syrup and cayenne maybe. Does that
Yeah,
ring a
I
bell?
think I've heard of that.
Yeah.
That's a disaster waiting to happen.
Really?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
So what? Before we get into it, I mean, can we just describe Candida for people
Yeah, sure.
that aren't
No
really sure
problem.
exactly what it is? It seems to be like becoming very sort of popular, and it seems to be one of the things that we need to look at a little bit more.
Well, the more gut biome and microbiome is talked about, the more Candida will be talked about, because Candida is a really important part of your microbiome. Most people think the microbiome in terms of acidophilus and yogurt and things like that from probiotics, which is true. That's the good part of your microbiome. Candida represents kind of the bad part. Everyone has Candida. All mammals have Candida. Candida is a minor organism in your microbiome, and the good probiotics keep it under control. They actually literally use it as a food and eat it, and they suppress its activity. When Candida overgrows, and that's what we're concerned with, because when you speak to a medical doctor about Candida, if he's a real jerk, the first thing he's going to say is everybody has Candida, so it doesn't make any difference. Well, it's true, everybody has Candida, but not everybody has an overgrowth of Candida, and that's all we're concerned about. When we test people, we're concerned about testing them for an overgrowth, not to see if they have it, but to see if they have too much.
Okay.
And when you have too much Candida releases various toxins into your body. It releases mycotoxins, which are fungal or yeast related toxins. It releases neurological toxins into your body, which affect your nervous system. It releases tons of aldehydes, which are alcohols, into your body. There's actually a Japanese strain of Candida that releases so much alcohol that it makes people legally drunk. So, so
So how did go ahead.
Candida is a bad organism that creates disease in your body. It can create rheumatoid arthritis. It can cause eczema. Literally, it can cause like hundreds of illnesses that doctors are unaware of it as it being the underlying cause. But a whole list of skin conditions, asthma, autism is highly attributed to Candida. Candida is very similar in how it behaves in your body to cancer, in that it thrives on sugars and simple carbohydrates, and it physically eats into your tissues. So, like when you hear stories about how the guy's cancer was so bad it literally ate his rib cage or something like that, Candida does that to a lesser degree. It literally goes into your, permeates your tissues and eats through them.
So that must be a challenge nowadays for the type of diet that we've all been addicted to, like the sugars and the simple carbs and all the
Yep.
breads and all that, like especially American, Canadian diets. I mean, it must be are we seeing a massive increase in this because of that?
No, actually, it's on the decrease in the last few years because more people are becoming aware.
Oh, okay.
But this is what makes the carnivore diet and keto diet so popular. And this is one of the reasons people feel so good on the carnivore diet and the keto diet, because they don't know they have Candida. They go on the diet and the diet ends up starving the Candida. So the Candida goes into a remission and they feel much better. And they don't know that that was one of the mechanisms. They just
Oh,
attribute it all to the fact that they weren't eating carbs or sugar, and then they were getting the high protein. So that's a funny little twist on it, but yeah, that is what happens.
Darren, what was your question
Well,
there?
how does it get to that? If we've all got it in us, is it just the diet? Is that's what's sparking it up in people, or is it other lifestyle things, or how does a person end up with like a candida bloom?
Literally anything that disturbs your biome, which controls the candida. It would be, the analogy was be like if you were in a prison and you had prison guards. The prison guards keep the prisoners under control. If you get rid of the prison guards, the prisoners get out of control. So it's literally anything that disturbs your biome or compromises your biome allows the candida to start to overgrow, because then you don't have the good biome there to suppress the candida.
Huh. So what do I mean, you're in the States, right? So it's going to be different than us. We're in Canada, so we have a completely different medical system. It's broken in different ways, but I
Hmm.
feel like they're both broken in their own ways. But
Yeah.
is there some acceptance to testing for this in your mainstream medical community, or are we trying to work towards that?
No,
And
we're
what
still
about other
trying to work.
countries?
We're still trying to work towards that. And it depends on the doctor. It can almost break down to the individual doctor.
Yeah,
Functional medical doctors, clinical nutritionists, naturopaths, all the people that are doing more
alternative.
higher, alternative or higher end, you can call it medicine, where they're using more advanced testing. People who are more practitioners who are more interested in looking for the cause of the problem as opposed to prescribing a drug that covers up the symptoms. Those are the doctors who are more aware of candida.
That's kind of what I figured.
You know?
So in Canada, I bet we don't even really test for it then, do we? Unless it's specifically asked for. I mean, even then, it's hard for us to ask for tests. I mean, they'll kind of give you a bit of a hard time, like if you ask for more blood, more biomarkers than are
Mhm.
standardized.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, the standard lab, even in the United States, doesn't test correctly for candida.
Right.
It's only
Okay.
the more advanced labs, the cutting edge labs, that do the proper testing for candida. So in
Because
either country,
it seems to me like this is something that needs to be sorted out earlier than later, like because this could be the core cause of a lot of stuff, right? I mean, I've heard you talk
yeah.
about it, all these other manifestations that happen, and it could be because of candida. Like it feels like that's one of the first things that should be figured out in a way.
Yeah, well, it's on RFK Jr.'s list. He hasn't gotten to it yet, but it's on his list because of how it affects autistic kids. Kids who become overly toxic. They're overly inundated with toxins from vaccines and from amalgam fillings, if the dentist still uses them. They develop candida, and candida affects them tremendously. So yes, it is an underlying issue, just like parasites are. Now, on social media, there's this big thing towards parasites. Everyone's becoming more aware of parasites, taking ivermectin, menazole, all these different drugs, and it's similar. Candida and parasites run a parallel with each other.
Are they connected at all? Like, is
Yeah,
it
they are. If you have the same problems in your microbiome that would allow parasites to live, allow the candida to live, so they're both synergistic with each other.
okay? I was going to ask you about parasites because you're right. It's there's a lot of people focusing. They say it's all about parasites now. Everything's parasites. But can you also kind of define that? Because isn't there different types of parasites? I mean,
Yes.
there's the worms, the real ugly looking like creatures that come out of you that I guess are considered parasites. But then there's also smaller microscopic parasites, right?
Yes, the definition of parasite in Latin is to eat off the table of another, which is essentially what they do. Parasites steal your food, and Candida does the same thing. Candida steals huge amounts of B12 and iron and vitamin D from people. Parasites generally eat your food, and the old joke we used to have was that there are two types of parasites. There's the smart ones, which are the microscopic ones, which are classified as amoebas usually. And then there's the dumb ones, which are the big ones that you can see, which are hemolymph, and those are the worms.
Okay.
And there's many different types of worms.
Yeah.
But the bad thing about the parasites is they carry virus. A lot of viruses are carried by and are hosted by the parasite in your body. Candida doesn't do that. Candida has its own shtick, but it's common. They're common. It's common to find them both together because I said before the same imbalance in your intestines the same lack of friendly bacteria or the same lack of a proper immune response in your intestines that would allow Candida to grow allows the parasites to grow. So they're often found together.
Yeah, yeah. So what do I want to go to now? The testing. Maybe I've heard you talk about the stool tests, how they're not like you did some study where they were all like different results came back from like 5 different stool tests. So is that what is the best way to test for it? And if people wanted to get their doctor to test for it, what would they actually ask for?
If you're going to do a stool test to test for Candida, you have to have somebody who's really experienced and understands what to look for, because a lot of times, maybe half of the time, Candida comes up negative in the stool test, even though it's in the body.
Okay.
And there are other parameters, other things that are out that you have to look for that will tell you the Candida is there, but it just didn't get picked up in that stool sample. The easiest way to test for Candida and the most accurate is a urine test, which is called an oats test. And this oats test, oats is short for organic acids. And organic acids are produced by different creatures. Humans have their own set of organic acids. Every animal has different organic acids it creates, and every system in your body has different organic acids that it releases as part of its metabolism. Candida has a unique set of organic acids that it releases. So if you find those organic acids in the person's urine in abundance, you know they're probably coming from Candida, because the body normally wouldn't make those.
And you mentioned vitamin D and iron. Is it if you're supplementing those things? I know somebody who's iron deficient, and she's trying to figure out why her iron levels are always low.
Candida absorbs huge amounts of iron. In fact, part of the work that I did in writing the book, The Candida Chronicles, was to reverse engineer a lot of things that Candida does. And I did that by looking at the pharmaceuticals that typically kill Candida.
Okay.
And 2 of them work by blocking the Candida's ability to absorb iron. And another one blocks the Candida's ability to absorb vitamin D. So right there, that tells you that iron and vitamin D would feed the Candida and make it stronger.
Okay. So in other words, if you have iron deficiency and candida, then don't just supplement iron, I guess.
No, get rid of can't worry about getting rid of the Candida, because the more iron you take, the more iron you're giving the Candida.
Yeah.
For someone who can't easily get a test, or like people in Canada, people in socialized medicine systems, it's a little trickier to do this sort of thing. I haven't actually tried, so I can't, but that's just what Graham's been through the ringer on trying to do a bunch of this sort of non-mainstream stuff. You mentioned a couple of symptoms. What are the main things someone might be experiencing that they're like, hey, it's worth checking this out, or trying a fast or something to get it under control? Like, what's a test way someone could do if they don't have access to a doctor?
There's a few ways you can do this. One is response to treatment. You can go on the Candida diet, see if you feel better. Now, you may get an intermediate period where you feel worse, and that's normal. That's the Candida dying from starving it. But ultimately, if you feel better on the Candida diet, that's a good sign. If you take antifungals and you get a bad reaction to the antifungals, that's usually something called a die-off reaction, or technically it's known as a Herxheimer reaction. As it was Dr. Herxheimer discovered this, that if he treated somebody with parasites or Lyme disease, they would go through a period of feeling like they had the flu, and that was actually the microorganism dying.
Almost like the keto flu, really, too, right? Probably.
The keto flu very often is a Herxheimer reaction the person's having. So those are things you can do. It's response to treatment, it's response to the diet, and then you could also take a look at your antibiotic history, because antibiotics still are the most common ways people develop Candida. They take an antibiotic, the antibiotic kills their friendly bacteria that protects them from Candida, then the Candida grows. So look at your antibiotic history, look at your health history, and see if you felt worse after taking antibiotics, or if you were chronically worse since you had taken around a course of antibiotics at some point.
Okay.
And the symptoms you're looking for are digestive: bloating, gas, constipation. You're also looking for virtually any symptom that gets worse when you eat sugar or starch, because that feeds the Candida, and once you feed the Candida and it grows, you start getting these symptoms.
Okay.
Also, brain fog is a very common symptom of Candida. Forgetting people's names, forgetting things, cognitive issues. Then, as I said before, rashes are very common. If you go online and do a search for eczema and candida, you'll come up with 300 million documents.
So I guess a good way to follow that would be to get your book too, right? And
The book makes it easy because it's all in the book. You can look at all the symptoms and see if you have these symptoms.
yeah,
And if the symptoms get worse when you eat sugar or starch, and you put enough of this empirical data together, and you'll probably be 90% accurate on it.
yeah.
Man.
Karen,
Well, I noticed something in the thing that Command Your Brand sent me that was talking about the long COVID, that people are sort of, this is all this new thing going around. Everyone's got long COVID. I mean, I don't want to debate whether or not what's going on there, but that kind of ties it into COVID. We've had this max vaccination thing go on, but you mentioned that Candida is on the.
Well, let me explain something to you on there.
Okay.
First of all, there's no such thing as long COVID in the way
That's
people
my
think.
thought too.
Okay.
Long COVID implies that the COVID virus is still alive and churning in your body. That's not true. What COVID does two really interesting things. It causes candida, number one. So when a person gets COVID, they can develop candida, and when the COVID's gone, they still have candida and they still
Wow.
feel like crap. So they still think they have COVID. COVID also exhausts your adrenal glands. Every single person I've ever seen who claimed they had long COVID, when I tested them, they were in adrenal exhaustion. So those are the two components of long COVID. It's adrenal exhaustion and it's candida. And the third thing, which is just now getting more attention, is the spike protein. Dr. Fauci, back in the day, said that the spike protein from COVID was out of your system in a few weeks. Well, like everything else he said that was a lie, we now have tremendous scientific proof that says that's not true. We've seen the spike protein be elevated in people for 4 years. The most I saw was 6 years.
Wow.
And as long as you have that spike protein in your body, that can cause a lot of different symptoms. So it's not long COVID in terms of the virus. It's long COVID in terms of candida, adrenal exhaustion, and the spike protein.
And isn't there a thing? I mean, I did have this friend that he wasn't vaccinated, because I used to just say, well, it was all people that have long COVID have vaccine injuries, but he wasn't vaccinated, and he had COVID early on, like quite early compared to most of the people I knew, and there was a thing that gets like a leftover from an RSV type virus, or kind of like I can't remember what the name of it is, but it's like a leftover infection from the virus. Is that the same thing you're
That
talking
happens
about?
in
Or is
some
that
people.
different?
No,
Yeah,
that's different. That
then that's
happens in
not
some
long
people.
COVID. That's not really long COVID.
No, it's not really
That's-
long COVID, but it can be mistaken to be such.
Yeah,
And
right.
that doesn't happen as frequently as the person who has COVID, who gets candida or gets adrenal exhaustion or the spike protein. Those are the three biggies. There's a study from Japan that showed that the COVID vaccine actually caused candida in many people. And they specifically nailed down how it was. I observed this because when COVID came out, we started having a lot of people come back to us who had finished their treatment years ago saying, I don't know what happened. I feel like my candida is coming back. I didn't do anything. I don't know what. And it turns out they were vaccinated. Now,
Oh, wow.
the vaccine seems to kill bifidus bacteria in your colon. And that's one of the major control mechanisms for candida. Bifidus controls the growth of candida. It suppresses the growth of candida in your colon. So if this Japanese study is true, that the vaccine kills the bifidus bacteria, then that answers so much.
Just another thing to add to the long bullet list of things that the vaccine is doing to people that we didn't really know about.
So that kind of implies that we could actually be going through a surge of candida, but it's actually just the knowledge of people actually knowing what it is that's causing the problem.
I would agree. But the vaccine is something we could talk about for hours. The vaccine is one of the biggest scams in history.
Yeah.
And one of the most harmful ones also too. Every day that goes by, I get more and more data coming to me on another study showing something else that the vaccine does.
And in Canada, we just had advertising that the new one is out. I mean, our health Canada is still just pushing, going forward, and it's crazy making. It makes you go like, well, how is this possible that they can keep doing this when all the data and information's out there? We're so far behind; it's unbelievable.
Well, there's still that happening in this country, but the thing that's really amazing is COVID goes back to the 60s. 1966 is when COVID was first identified, and they first started to manipulate it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, most people don't. That's not something brand new that just came around and, oh my God, how terrible. It's been around for quite a while. It is definitely a biological weapon
Yeah.
that got loose.
Huh.
So so what's your thought then? Because this is sort of the argument that Graham and I went back and forth on when it was all sort of happening. Because it's like, well, if it's a bioweapon, does that further that we should get these fucking shots?
The shots don't work.
Well, that's my
That's
thought
the
too. And
problem.
ultimately, we didn't get the shots. In full disclosure, we managed to hold out, even though we got threat of internment and everything else in Canada. But we had that conversation where we were like, if COVID's a bioweapon, then is this rust for shots because they know it's a bioweapon and they have some way to get on top of it, or like?
I think initially that was the thinking. That was Operation Warp Speed. President Trump wasn't given all the data at that time. All they knew is they had the makings of a vaccine that had been around since the 60s for COVID, and they didn't know what else to do, and they had Fauci advising them, who should be in jail. So when you put all that together, then you have the vaccine which wasn't properly tested. Then also Pfizer probably, you could call it the grandfather of COVID. There's more data from Pfizer on COVID because they were involved with manipulating it. And luckily, one of a disgruntled employee, when they left Pfizer at the time, took top secret information on the COVID vaccine and spread it all over the internet. I have one of the copies, and it goes through a whole list of all the side effects that they observed. Like all these children that were children athletes, high school, college athletes, all suddenly dying. They were all vaxxed. There's a whole list of people who you could suspect died from the vaccine. Hank
Well,
Aaron, the
but
baseball player, was
but I
out
mean,
promoting the vaccine, and then all of a sudden he was dead.
but what I don't get is that it was tested enough to show that these adverse events were there. I mean, we were looking at the original documentation in the fall of 2020, going like they're showing adverse events here in their own silly studies, and yet, and then the media went to lie and say it was safe and effective. So,
Well,
how do they get away with even like
it depends on how far you want to take this.
yeah.
We have, as an example, one of the people who made a tremendous amount of money from the vaccine was Bill Gates. Now, if you listen to Bill Gates talk long enough, you find out he is 100% for depopulation.
Yeah.
Bill Gates wants to reduce the population on Earth. Now, I've got to say to somebody, common sense. If you got somebody who's out preaching depopulating the planet, are you going to take health advice from this guy?
No, did it fail in that regard then? Because we talk about the fine line, like because we went over some of the data about the young, like so 0 to 5 year olds that have been born
Not vaccinated, just born to vaccinated mothers. That's the biggest caveat.
And this spike protein again. The spike protein is getting transferred. Now, you could end the whole saga by just killing the spike protein. But every time you get vaccinated or you get COVID again, you're going to re-inherit the spike protein. But if you can keep that spike protein out of your system, which you can do very easily with enzymes physically destroy the spike protein. Nattokinase will, bromelain will, and especially the combination of the mineral germanium with those enzymes destroys the spike protein. So if a person can just keep free of the spike protein, they're generally okay.
But did they fail in their quest? I mean, because the number, we've always said that the number of excess deaths is not quite enough to cause a stir. It's enough to be obvious for those that are looking at it, but
Right.
it's like barely, it's enough to make a difference, but not enough to cause a fuss.
It's a little confusing because when you look at all the different vaccines, and the group of doctors that I work with, the functional medical group, we did this, and we were kind of amazed because we got samples of vaccines from different countries, and some of them were nothing but distilled water, and others were the real vaccine. And amongst all the real vaccines, they differed. Some of the real vaccines had all of these precious elements in there, thallium and all these elements that you're saying, well, what are we trying to do? Turn people into radios or TV sets or something, computers? Because why are all these elements that are associated with electronics in these vaccines? And I wrote a newsletter a while ago, like saying it was something to the effect is we finally know what the secret ingredient in the COVID vaccine is, and it's all of these precious rare earth elements that are used in electronics. There's loads of them in some of the vaccines. Why? Well, we found that some of them had actual documentation of having an antiviral effect, where others, depending on how much you took, and accelerated viral activity, and accelerated not only the destruction of DNA but the altering of DNA and the telometers. Now, for people who don't know what a telometer is, sort of like the simple way to explain it. Everyone knows DNA, and everyone knows like you have DNA that's programmed from your parents. That if they have arthritis there and you have the gene, then there's the odds are you'll get arthritis at some point. Some I think enough people know this from 23andMe and all these different genetic testing you can do. Well, what the COVID does is it upsets the telometers, which is like the alarm clock that tells the DNA when to go off. So if you have in your family gene issues or gene problems, let's say, that would cause you to have arthritis in your 70s, like your father did, your grandfather did, COVID screws that alarm clock up and it makes it go off now
Okay, yeah, that's
or
what
at
I
some
thought.
other
Yeah, yeah,
unpredictable
that's
time.
why people are having, like, shingles, flare-ups and autoimmune flare-ups and stuff like
Right.
that.
Yep.
So is that COVID or the vaccine?
That's the vaccine
Okay, 'cause
with all
you
those crazy
yeah,
electronic elements
okay,
in there.
okay. Yeah, that's because you said COVID, so I was, like, just
But
making sure you're talking about the
the
vaccine.
spike protein has an effect on the telometer too.
Okay.
So it's not
It's not
100% either
just
one
that,
way.
yeah, yeah.
No.
What's your, if you don't mind me asking, what's your opinion on this whole, because there's been a bit of a split as again, and another split in the freedom movement, the medical freedom movement kind of thing. You know, this whole virus is fake thing, and people are, you know, there's been a whole
The
section
virus is
of,
fake?
well, you know, viruses aren't real.
Viruses
Oh,
are
oh,
fake. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's is that, have you noticed it, that sort of
I've
making
heard
it
a
more
little bit of that.
difficult to,
I've had a couple of people come and approach me with that.
yeah,
That's taking conspiracy theories to the extreme.
yeah.
And that's crazy. Viruses, we've known viruses have existed. The virus is technically the smallest, most minute form of life. And you can look at a virus and see it under an electronic microscope. So this whole thing that viruses really don't exist is all nonsense.
Oh, it's gaining quite a bit of traction, though. I mean, there's a whole movement, and it's a bunch of people that, you know, I respect too, and I wish they wouldn't be distracted, because to me it's just a distraction. Like, it doesn't really change the way we should be handling all these things by saying the stuff doesn't exist. It just makes it more difficult.
There's an old saying in politics: if you lie long enough and hard enough, eventually people are going to start to believe it.
Yeah, yeah. We're seeing that happen.
So what about, I wouldn't mind just digging as well, we're sort of on the topic, because that's the other argument here as well. Well, all these like the myocarditis is from COVID and the vaccine, and it's all from COVID and the vaccine. And it does seem
That's
like
probably
COVID
true.
does carry this spike vaccine. So where does that put you on the spectrum if you have COVID or you got the shots? Is COVID is naturally just passing COVID still better than the vaccines, or so you're not double dipping?
Yeah, it is. We did a study in my practice. We took 400 people and we looked at them as far as their vaccine status. And it was very actually turned out to be statistically very simple after a while. It was almost becoming predictable. The more times people got vaxxed, the more times they had COVID. The fewer times someone got vaxxed, the fewer times they had COVID. So that's got to tell you something right there.
Right. So it's not even a doubling up like Darren was talking about. Now you're also increasing your chances of actually getting it. So then you've
Getting
got
it
the
again
spike from the jab and more COVID as
and
well to
more
add
COVID.
to it. It's like you're compiling all the things.
And COVID has from the original popular strain, I'll call it, that we had a few years ago, it's mutated. But COVID's been mutating since the 60s. But the strain that got loose was pretty bad, especially for older people, people who were immune deficient, and for children. That strain was pretty nasty. Now it's a glorified flu or cold for the most part.
The
Does
Delta
it
is what's coming out?
naturalize? Sorry, does it naturalize eventually? Like when you have something like that, does it eventually get back into sort of a more natural form?
No, this can't because of the spike protein. The spike protein was added to COVID. That's what weaponized it. When they added the spike protein to the virus, it weaponized it. And now it mutates with the spike protein. So
There's no
no,
getting rid of
that
that.
would be not a nice thought, but no, it doesn't seem to be what's going to happen.
That sounds like get you.
Say we should all write the Communist Chinese Party a nasty letter.
Yeah. Well, we
Because
might. Yeah.
they unleashed a nasty one on us.
Well, we might yet. So you mentioned like, does this Candida diet, if you're sort of following that, do you stay on that all the time, or is it just a cleanse thing, or is it ideal you just sort of eat like that?
No, with the Candida diet, you stay on it until you reestablish your proper flora, your biome again, and then you should not need to be on it unless there's some special circumstance. But for the most part, a person, no, they would not need to be on it.
So your
And that takes a
natural.
while, though, right? It takes a few months.
Yeah, it could take 6 months to a year.
Interesting. So would that does that diet also have the stuff in it that would get rid of the spike proteins as
No.
well? No?
No.
What do you have to
Different.
eat to get rid of these?
There's really enzymes are what destroy the spike protein. There are some other substances which sort of polarize it, but if you really want to get rid of the spike protein, it's enzymes that will physically digest it.
How do you get a hold of those?
You can just buy them online. Nattokinase, as I said before, is one.
Yeah.
In my protocol for the spike protein, I combine nattokinase and bromelain and the trace mineral germanium. That's what I found has worked the best.
And can people find that online?
Yeah, easy.
On your website? Which website would they go to?
No, they're not going to find that on my website. I don't believe.
Okay.
They'd have to look at my newsletters.
Okay. Yeah.
But as far as buying them, they can easily buy these supplements online.
Yeah, for sure. But could they find the protocol on your? Because I
No.
mean,
No, I don't think the actual we don't put protocols. We stopped
Yeah.
putting protocols on
Yeah.
our website
Yeah.
because people would call up who weren't patients and they'd have a million questions and they would tie up reception. So we had to just stop. We had to stop doing that.
Can they sign up to your newsletter from your website?
Yeah, they can.
And then they can get the news, and then they can go into your newsletter. And
Mhm.
okay, yeah, maybe that's what we can direct people to, because I mean, there's still people
that are
to.
going to want to get rid of the spike protein. This is going to be a huge thing in our audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look on Instagram, and I think even on X, there are commercials now for some supplements that are commercially available to get rid of the spike protein. In fact, I think I saw one on television the other
Yeah,
night too.
the wellness companies kind of growing to the point where they're selling that nattokinase. They're selling a spike detox with nattokinase too, I think. But
there it is.
How often?
But there's a lot of people that think they're a controlled op and it's a big conspiracy now, and they're just everything is a psyop these days, which is also getting very frustrating.
Well, the problem is a lot of things are when they're not identified as such, then it makes it easy for everything to be.
Exactly. It all comes back to all the lies that have been perpetuated, and now it's all coming back to. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The same thing the other day.
So basically, you'd be taking these enzymes, I guess, forever, right? Because this stuff is now naturally in the environment, or you would just take them if you got COVID again. Basically,
I would say you would just take it if you got COVID, or if somehow you got it vaccinated again for some strange reason. And you take the enzymes until you can feel you'll go through a period of feeling like you have the flu for a few days. And that's the spike protein being destroyed, and then you come out of that, or you can go get a blood test for the spike protein and see if it's gone now or dropped dramatically.
I don't know if they'll do those blood tests in Canada. I mean, that probably won't.
You might get arrested just for asking.
Yeah, you might get. Yeah. What was I going to ask you about the blood test for the spike protein?
There's a couple of different kinds. There's an antibody test. That's the easiest one you can get.
Yeah.
An antibody for the protein, but I believe they also have a PCR test for the spike protein, which I would go more with.
Okay.
That would be more accurate. That's a DNA test for the spike protein.
So what about Darren sort of jokingly said, well, if you get vaccinated, but I mean, I've had close members of my family be exposed to freshly vaccinated people, and it's affected them. It's affected their bleeding and stuff like that. So there is a shedding effect, but it won't shed to the point where you get spike, right? Will it?
That's the darndest thing because it sounds crazy, but in actual fact, I've had so many patients tell me it,
I
patients
know.
who I know are reliable that
Yeah,
I can't deny that people are saying this
I know.
and that these people are reputable. Why it happens, I don't know. I just know that people report it.
But
And
does it shed to the spike, or does something else just shed to it? Like
no,
that's, I guess,
if it's going to shed, it's going to shed all the way because the virus is very small and the spike protein's attached to it. So it would be all or nothing at all.
okay. Because I think it was somebody we were talking to, William Mackis, maybe a while back, who didn't think that it was as bad, to be shed on compared to being jabbed. It was quite a bit less
I'd have to agree with that.
less
That's more
concerning.
direct for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Yeah.
if you're still getting the spike, I mean, you might want to do like that enzyme thing, like a yearly or bi-yearly type thing or something. If people are still, especially if people are still getting vaccinated. I mean, one of the people I knew was at the dentist. They went to the dentist, and there are a bunch of vaccinated people, freshly vaccinated people working on their, so really up close. And then the next thing you know, they're bleeding. Right? That's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that is crazy. Well, I think RFK Jr. has done a lot of work to expose the COVID vaccine, and he's gotten it taken off the mandatory vaccine list. And I think that there's enough data coming out where you have to be living in a cave and just watching MSNBC all day not to know that there's a problem here with this.
Are you pretty happy with how that's going then? How Maha and RFK are doing? Like what's your,
Yeah,
are
I
you
mean,
following it? Yeah.
he's going as fast as he can.
Yeah, that's kind of what I
These
think. Yeah.
they've got a lot to do, but they're going as fast as they can.
Yeah,
And
a
it
lot of
seems to
people
be
are.
accelerating a little bit, at least finally. Because for a while, I mean, people were kind of up in arms for a bit, and I don't know where they're at now. And I was kind of with them because I was like, well, but then we kind of settled into we got to give him just 2 years. Let's see what he gets done in 2 years. I feel like that's a long enough time frame that we should start to see some movement, which it kind of seems like we're starting to see now.
Yeah, already. But the people that were the most up in arms were the politicians who were getting the most money from the drug companies. That was irrefutable. We had a whole
Well,
list of them.
yeah, but we have. I mean,
Who the all if you have a list of all the politicians that were screaming the loudest against him, and then you compared that to the money they got from the drug company, it was perfectly neat and in order.
I know, but what we're talking about is people in our, like, conspiracy podcast realm that are up in arms because they just don't trust
Anyone?
anything. Like, so they don't trust RFK. They think it's all a psyop, and I'm like, well, we got to give them some time to do this.
We,
I mean,
you know what cures them of that? Have them read his book,
yeah,
the real Anthony Fauci.
yeah,
If you read RFK's book, The Real Anthony Fauci, you can't get past 5 pages of that without putting your hands to your head and going, "Oh my God, I can't believe this happened."
yeah.
Because he got all Fauci's emails to write the book somehow. I don't know how he got them, but the things that are in that book, and he doesn't hold anything back. He just tells you exactly who they are, what they did.
Yeah,
So
that's kind of what I think too. Is it's too big for that to be like a controlled op. He's like, it's too risky. They're laying too much of it out there. They don't need to go that hard with a control op. Like
no,
it's
that's
it's
true.
just, and he's got people talking about all kinds of stuff. I mean, even just like the chemtrails and the contrails and the food dyes and all the stuff that, I mean, it's just, uh, if we were to say that 5 years ago, oh, we're going to talk about all this stuff at the highest levels of government, I mean, there's no way we would have thought that that was a
Well,
reality.
it's changed. I mean, there's Trump released a lot of the JFK files, the Martin Luther King Jr. assassination files. They're releasing tons of files on UFOs.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they're letting it out. They're getting it out as fast as they can without being sloppy.
yeah. Is he going to finally wake up to warp speed though, being a bit of a disaster? I mean, is
Oh, I
Trump
think he
going to
already
come down
knows
to?
this. Yeah,
Does
he
he?
already knows this.
All right.
He already knows this.
Yeah, that's one thing that's holding people back too. They're like, he still thinks it, saved millions of lives or whatever. So
No, he doesn't.
Okay.
That may be a PR move at some point here
Yeah.
and there, but he knows the truth.
Yeah.
RFK enlightened him very quickly.
Yeah, and there's got to be a bit of politicking that has to happen too, where he has to play both sides for a little while. I would assume, you know.
Well, he had COVID at one point, and they handled him pretty much with all vitamins and whatnot. He got over it in a few hours. So, with his metabolism being so hardy,
Yeah.